In this video, I'm going to be talking about what a de facto standard is. A de facto standard is a custom or convention that has achieved a dominant position by public acceptance from market forces. For example, by early entrance into the market. De facto is a Latin phrase that means in fact, literally, or from fact, in the sense from in practice but not necessarily in ordained by law, or in practice or actuality but not necessarily established, as opposed to de jure. So, what does that actually mean? A de facto standard is a voluntary standard that becomes so widely adopted it becomes a practical requirement. How do de facto standards form? A de facto standards form when a voluntary standard becomes so widely used and adopted that it becomes a de facto standard and a requirement. So a good example of what I mean is TCP/IP. TCP/IP. Okay. So the Internet Protocol Suite. TCP/IP. Right. Okay. So what I mean by this, right? A de facto standard is a voluntary standard that becomes so widely adopted it becomes a practical requirement, right? So in the early days of the internet, we chose to use TCP/IP, right, as the communication protocol we use in the internet. Now there are other protocols, right? There are other protocols that exist like UDP, but we use TCP/IP, right? Now, if you want to communicate with basically any other computer on the internet, any server, if you want to access the internet at all, you have to use TCP/IP. And this is a really good example. It's not required by law. There's no law requiring this, but it becomes a requirement because it's so widely adopted, right? It's so widely used and so widely adopted. TCP/IP is that it becomes a de facto requirement, right? A de facto standard. So that's what it means. It's a de facto standard. It is a requirement. It is it's so widely used it becomes a requirement. So that is TCP/IP, and that is what a de facto standard means.